about cycles, but from an infrastructure perspective, about like the kind of invisible advantages and like creative uh, solutions that you might uh, be able to have from building infrastructure for cycles. Just like how like a car is useless in the Amazon rainforest, you need to build asphalt roads and a whole bunch of petroleum infrastructure for a car to be useful. Now let's talk about the background for cycles, like what that looks like. I'll talk about 9 points of the invisible benefits of cycling, and then like a few things we could do to promote it within our cities. So when I was in the UK, I was quite impressed by their cycling infrastructure, uh, and they have a nationwide cycling highway that's actually quite well connected. And I also notice how uh, their cycle network sometimes cuts through housing blocks, and they're they can be like very narrow, which is something that you can't do for motor vehicles. So this like allows for all sorts of maneuvers from a design perspective that wouldn't be possible with cars, motor vehicles. You can build infrastructure uh, at the same factor of safety level, but for much cheaper. You can have it cut through residential zones. You can have them. You can have simple bridges that cut through buildings because cycles are much more quieter and safer. And yeah, like you can have them hang off existing infrastructure. Um, like you can also like park them anywhere because they're so small. You can park them into nooks and crannies that wouldn't otherwise be useful. You can park them in the first floor of a house. You can carry them upstairs. And I've seen these vertical carousel parking for in Japan for space constrained situations, which I think is a bit over engineered for cars, but for cycles, I think it makes much more sense because you can have them parked much more densely. Um, but even without all that, there's quite a, quite a lot of like very simple double-decker parking systems for cycles. So not only are cycles much more denser when they're parked, so even uh, when you compare the flow of traffic, cycles are also faster. They transport more humans per cross-section length of road uh, than cars do. So talking about the economic and manufacturing side, so car companies make money not from selling cars, but by selling spare parts and repairs. Uh, so they're betting on like a lifetime subscription on part purchases because they have because their intellectual property is locked down. Their parts are locked down. They can't um, uh, you can't have competition come in. So and for a car company, the barrier of entry is very high. So uh, all in all, it's just a much more centralized uh, economic activity, and this also allows for all these kind of unideal situations to balloon, where car companies have this incentive to lobby governments, and they have the money to lobby governments. But since cycles are so simple, you simply cannot create like monopolies and lock down like your paths or lock away competition because the barrier of entry is so small. Like if you try to make even like a very minor component expensive, like even small shops could compete against you. When you build infrastructure for cycles, it's also much less maintenance. There's a law where the road damage scales with the fourth power of your axle weight. So trucks and cars cause the majority of the damage on roads. So like a truck passing over the road is a million times more damaging on the road than a cycle is. You can compound modes of transport with cycles, especially electric cycles and like foldable cycles. You can carry them into metros, into buses, uh, sometimes, um, which helps with last mile connectivity and makes these other public forms of transport more appealing in circumstances that might not have looked appealing before. So much cheaper to build for cycles. It's fewer microplastics, healthier, they're quieter, which is something that cities should aspire to be. They're lighter, they're much more safer. So when you do get into a crash, there's just not as much momentum. They're ideal for transport within cities because points of interest are more densely packed. They're just closer together. So what can we do? So I think that you could build more cycle paths for sure, but even something as simple as building more protected parking for cycles will go a long way. Having them in major locations like metros and major bus stops would solve a huge pain point. Making it free, you can make the motor parking paid, but you can make the cycle parking free, at least like a small section. I think especially for our circumstances in India, e-cycles would probably be more appealing for the type of adoption that I'm talking about. And for that, one barrier is its susceptibility to theft. So you could also have cycle theft being taken more seriously, but also just more protected parking, cameras for the parking, more like free services for cycles, because I think it's actually beneficial to promote cycling. Even for like parking, the upper floors of buildings are like cheaper. It's cheaper rent. You can take your cycle into a lift and you can use the upper floors for parking, which is not something available for cars and scooters. Like it's not as safe. So there's all these like tiny benefits that you can take advantage of with this switch in transport. Like it unlocks a layer of design options that are impossible outside of cycles. And as a more longer term goal, and which would be beneficial overall, not just for cyclists but for pedestrians and everybody really, will be having more pedestrian zones completely cut off to motor traffic. You could make them interesting. You can make them tree lined, have them filled with small shops, like a little bit of decorative elements, and lots of public seating. This would go a long way, not just for cyclists, but the quality of life would improve for the city if you had these kind of places to look forward to. Thanks for watching. You can add in more stuff that you like about cycles. Maybe you agree with some of my points, maybe you disagree. I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Thanks for watching.